Okay, my friends, we're going to talk about why are gymnasts so jacked and can we learn something from them? Here's an example. I mean, obviously, this guy has one heck of a physique. He's got the big arms, shoulders, even has pecs. Not all the gymnasts have big pecs, but they're all at least have pecs and they're well defined. So, we're going to go from two different articles, and I actually found the first one that was um, from 2016 from Jack Dowinger that posts sometimes on one of my favorite blogs. And so he posted this thing, and he was largely talking about this older article from 2004, which was from one of the coaches of these gymnasts. And despite what he says about, they don't do dumbbells, some of them do. They don't do crazy weight, but they do use light dumbbells for some of their stuff. Um, so Christopher Summer is the gentleman we're talking about, who's the gymnastic coach, and we'll get right into the interview from T Nation. So let's get started by talking a little about who you are, what you do, and so he's talking about having been a gymnastics coach, so he knows quite a bit about these things. So we're going to sprinkle pictures from modern day stuff and going back to the old school stuff, because honestly, I think a lot of the pre-steroid guys were like acrobat slash strongman, and they did a lot of these gymnastic moves, and that's how some of them got so ripped. So he's talking about every time the Olympics come around, people see the male gymnasts, and it's like, holy crap, these guys are jacked. How do they get that way? So coach says it is almost entirely from doing body weight exercises. Let me look at this guy's delts. He's doing the iron cross exercise there. So uh, and then we talk about there's a few different moves like the planche. I used to always just call it plank, but these guys seem to use the phrase planche. Planche push-ups, and it's saying how there is crossover to lifting weights, because he's talking about guys that can do these planche push-ups can often, like on their first try, do a double body weight bench press, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at. Now this is the planche, and he's on like a pair of parallettes there. So the key thing is that you're with straight arms. Now you can. So if you want to learn to do this, if you're not a gymnast like most of us aren't, uh, he suggests that you start with, and they were talking about doing planche push-ups. So this is a pseudo planche push-ups he was doing, where obviously his feet are touching the ground, but your arms are in there and everything in the same position. And then once you get into the more advanced levels and trying to do the actual planche push-up, you can help yourself by using heavy bands, as you saw there, to kind of give you a little bit of lift. Um, and it's talking about straight arm work is enormously difficult, puts tremendous strain on the biceps, resulting in incredible growth. And the key to success is being able to approach these exercises in a safe and progressive manner. So, what do you mean by straight arm work? Well, straight arm, the classic strength positions, which are like the iron cross or something called the Maltese, and the planche, all involve having straight arms. Like you can see this guy here, and looks like he's just getting into the iron cross position. And look at the biceps on this guy. And again, if he uses weights at all, it's very sparingly and as an addition, and it's not where he gets those biceps. So it kind of intrigued me. Maybe we could learn something from these guys. That's why I put this video together. Cross pull, he's talking about here, straight arm pull up. So that's kind of where, like with the rings, you're pulling yourself up and your arms are straight out, and that's way harder than a regular pull-up, as you can imagine. Um, and he's talking about this guy, friend of his in college, that could do the iron cross with 60 pounds, which looks like about what this guy's doing here. I don't know if this is his kid or just a friend of his kid, but he's doing an iron cross, and he's got that the kid's armpits are hanging on his feet. So I'm sure that kid weighs a 60 or 70 pounds. So that's pretty phenomenal right there. Um, so he's asking, how do we get crossover into these guys being really strong on some weightlifting movements? And he says, does indeed build incredible strength. He said, I was not even a particularly strong gymnast, and I was able to do a double body weight deadlift and weighted chins with almost 50% extra body weight on my first weight training effort. And everybody knows about doing chin ups and pull ups with extra weight, and that's a pretty decent amount of extra weight there. I don't know how many reps this guy's doing, but I can barely do a body weight couple of reps with chin ups these days, and it took me a while to even work up to that. Honestly, used to be able to do multiples back in the day. So for the competitive athlete or the real life athlete or military policeman, etc., it's not only unnecessary, but it's counterproductive to train to failure all the time. So that's an interesting concept. Now this is this gentleman doing it's Val Vasilief, who's an old school bodybuilder, and the Russian Bear was his nickname. But the one gentleman's holding the pole, and he's doing the flag, which is a pretty crazy thing. So why does gymnastics training result in such high levels of strength? It's unclear, but my personal opinion is that the secret lies in the plyometric nature of the movements. In a way, it reminds me of results experienced by Adam Marculata, which I don't know who that is, honestly. With the exception we're using body weight. Here's another with the same guy you saw in the last old school picture with Bill St. John supporting, again, Val Vasilief, doing the handstand. And he's kind of doing sort of a plank or planche. And he's talking about the ideal body for these guys is they're pretty small, and in fact, he's saying that giant gymnastics is this gentleman that's 5'8" and 170 pounds, and unbelievably thick and muscular. Just like you're saying, and he's an exception to the rule, just like Muggsy Bogues was 5'2" in the NBA. Now, a lot of the old school bodybuilders and powerlifters did, and even bigger guys like Arnie, he's 250 pounds here, and it's saying that he performed countless handstand press ups. So, Arnie certainly believed in those movements. Now, this is what you call a front lever, which you have to imagine is got to be really good for the core. And again, you got those straight arms, so it just holding yourself that hits your biceps pretty well. And then he's talking about, of course, Jack LaLanne, Jack LaLanne was big on calisthenics and push-ups and chin-ups and all that stuff. And in fact, he had some Guinness Book records where he did like 1,000 chin-ups and 1,000 push-ups all within a short time period. And there he is. And I think this is actually when he was setting that record. And actually, Jack had quite a physique. He was quite the bodybuilder back in the late 40s, and there will be a picture of him coming up in that regard. I was talking about this other guy that Gil, who was a rock climber, and talking about doing 7 consecutive pull-ups with right arm and 5 with his left. And he didn't start doing this until, a little bit later in his life. He didn't start doing it as a kid or anything. And you remember seeing him do a one-arm front lever in the 60s, which is pretty wild. This particular move is called a frog stand, and it's kind of one of the things that they say if you're want to get into doing the planches and planche push-ups, it's kind of a good starting movement. And he was talking about doing a body weight bench press on a stability ball with your feet in the air and then multiply that by 3. That's what he's talking about with the planche push-ups. And static holds in disadvantaged leverage positions and performing dynamic movements into and out of these positions are the secret to developing the enormous strength of world-class gymnasts. Um, and there's talking about old school guys doing this stuff. That is Mr. Grimmick right there. And he did like backward somersaults and other like gymnastic like things. And that really was a lot part of the training back in those days. If you're only training to look good, how athletic you are is of no importance. But if you'd like to be look good and be athletically functional, then you need more than just size and strength. You need balance, agility, coordination, and explosiveness. Is strength that's athletically usable. There again is the planche, and then your body is kind of leaned forward there, so your arms are at like a 45-degree angle, which is obviously not the most advantageous position to be in. Says I've seen gymnasts capable of doing planche push-ups do a double body weight bench press on their first attempt, but I've never seen a weightlifter capable of doing a double body weight bench press even come close to a planche push up on his first try or initially. Um, what's the secret of building substantial strength using exercise? And there's Jack again. And again, that's a heck of a physique there on Jack. And he was, obviously he trained with weights also, but he was a big believer in calisthenics. Obviously, did a lot of swimming, running, bicycling, all that stuff too. Um, and he's talking about uh, all the different body weight exercises that most of us probably don't even know about that these guys do. Like he says, his athletes have access to over 15 different varieties of dips, and that's just on the parallel bars. So, and then besides, you have the pommel horse, you have the iron, the rings, and all these other things. And here's another. This is a case of I'm not sure who that is here, but doing a flag and holding somebody on them. So that is a pretty impressive move. And a lot of the Muscle Beach guys did a lot of these types of moves. Um, again, he's talking about you need to be able, if you're going to be an athlete or, in the military, you need to be able to perform day after day. So you can't wipe yourself out on day one so that you're incapable of doing things on the next day. Now, we talked about the parallel bars and 15 different types of dips that you could do. This again, and we featured this guy in our last video, is Bobby Pandor. He's the guy that's on the left there, and quite a physique, which you can't really tell with. But he was part of an acrobatic act that featured parallel bars. So I think he got a lot of his physique from this kind of stuff. I was talking, the harder the full body contraction required to complete an exercise, the more effective it is. And it means by choosing these exercises which generate the most complete contractions, you'll greatly accelerate your gains. Now here is they ask what kind of leg exercises these guys do, and they said the one-legged squat, also known as the pistol, is one of the things they do. Obviously, they also do a lot of plyometric stuff like jumping. What about targeted ab training? Almost everything they do is hitting the core. Like here, he's just holding himself. They call this an all sit, I believe it's called, where he's just kind of holding himself with his legs out. So obviously, that's killer for your abs. Then he's talking about steroid use. You would think, looking at these guys, that they must be juicing. Well, not so much. He says it would do nothing at all to help a gymnast to learn a skill, for one thing. It also tends to bulk them up where they're trying to maintain a reasonably low body weight. So it wouldn't help them in that regard. And he says there's a big difference, So T Nation guy says just because people test clean doesn't mean they are, but this guy insists. He said, "Listen, I've worked with national level people, and they do not, as a rule, use steroids. So just kind of take my word for it." And then he finishes up with that he does a book, which probably wouldn't be a bad book to have. And this article again is from back in about 20 years ago, but I'm sure the book is still around. Building the Olympic Body, first and only book ever available, which provides detailed descriptions on all these things. Now, these days, honestly, there's a number of these gymnast type guys on YouTube, and they're showing you how to do a lot of these things. And I did include a few of those things here. This is something they call tiger bends, which is it almost looks like he's in the planche position, but in a handstand. And then Bill Pearl, another old school guy, talks about handstand dips for a real deltoid and triceps pump. This is it. You can do them on a pedestal, or if you have trouble even getting into the position, you can do it up against the wall, which is certainly how I would. And I've done that in the past when I was young. And this is, I believe, Anthony Diddalo, who's obviously a huge guy, who's probably like 300 pounds or more here. And Paul Anderson also did them. And we're going to move into another article. And it's the one from Dowinger. And since he covered all that other stuff, I didn't want to go back over it in the Dowinger article. So we'll cover this stuff. One gets the impression that barbell folks generally do not have that much respect for the exceptional physiques and demonstrable strength of the gymnastic community, or of the grassroots body weight trainers for that matter. But that's not the case. And we have a couple examples here. Joe Ladnier's in the middle. Not him. He didn't do gymnastics. But and I knew that Larry was into doing handstand push-ups and stuff, but I didn't know he actually had a gymnast background. That's interesting. And so did Fred. So Larry Pacificico is doubtful that most iron admirers were aware of his pre-lifting endeavors, but he had a verifiable background in gymnastics. And in fact, he talks about that one indicator of that was that he included these type of exercises in his powerlifting courses that he sold back in the day. And there he is doing a handstand push-up. And of course, dips and chin-ups is one of his big biceps things, and lat builders, as it talks about here. That's one of his favorite lat movement Larry did rely on was overhand grip chins, or pull-ups, and front levers on the chin bar. So yeah, I can imagine that does definitely hit your lats. So of course that came from Larry's gymnastic background, which probably a lot of you are not aware of. There's Larry there, and it goes back to way back when he was a kid, and started early, obviously, at age 13. It's about the same age that I started doing any kind of weight training myself. Another tidbit thrown in for good measure is that when Larry was inducted into the York Hall of Fame at one of the strength spectaculars in the 90s, a chin contest was announced as part of the overall program. And getting wind of this, Larry, who was in his middle 50s at the time, called in advance to find out if he could get into this thing, because he thought he could do pretty good. Now, here's Paul Anderson actually, again, doing the handstand push-ups, and obviously a huge guy. So, there's something to be said for these exercises when you see these guys doing these, obviously. Another example, as we mentioned, as the dual background of gymnastics and powerlifting of Fred Dr. Squat Hatfield. And he competed in gymnastics when he was in college, and then he got into competitive Olympic lifting before he was a powerlifter. Um, so, as he says, Fred experienced the full Monty. There he is, and it's interesting to note that this is like one of Fred's favorite pictures. You would think maybe his 1,000+ pound squat would mean more to him, but apparently not. And obviously, he's pretty light here, as you would be as a gymnast usually. Um, Following up on the notion that advanced bodyweight strength training is a province of only the smaller men, note the example of Bud Jeffries. We'll post a picture of him down the road. I don't know if you know him, but he used to do some pretty crazy body weight stunts, and body weight plus weight stunts also. And then talks about Carl Gotch, uh, who they had this video, which I looked and it was not available as of the moment, but at least it used to be. And it's about uh, basically combat conditioning. And I think Ross NMA had a video or book or both with a similar title. And then, of course, we have variations of dips. This is a Gironda dip, which is Larry Scott there doing it. And then, of course, the crazy stuff that Marvin Eder used to do with like doing reps of dips with two guys hanging on them. So basically, like doing dips with 400 pounds because these are not small guys. Um, and he did that kind of stuff all the time. There's Mr. Jeffries there. And again, big, strong dude, and was a big proponent of doing body weight type exercises. Um, so I think there's a lot to be said for this type of stuff. That's about it for the video. Thanks for watching, liking. Appreciate if you share, and if you have not subscribed, it would really help me out if you would. Thank everybody who have subscribed, and that's about it. I'm out.